my parents, my in-laws, family, and guests. Can everyone hear me? I want to first thank you all for being here despite the late hour. I want you to know how much Rachel and I appreciate each one of you and the influence and impact you have on our lives and the lives of our children. Thank you for participating in our simcha. I want to take a moment to recognize my Eshes Chayil, who I can say without a doubt is the most perfect partner for me. I still reflect on how kind HaKadosh Baruch Hu was to me, that at what was the most terrible time in my life, he would send me my most staunch supporter and stabilizing force. You're a wonderful wife and mother. I may not say it enough, I'll admit, but here I am saying it publicly.
Brownie points.
You've done more for this family than I could ever have imagined, and while it has not always been easy, you've stuck by me and supported me through it. It was a long and difficult pregnancy at times, but here we are with another most beautiful, perfect little guy. So thank you for everything, from small to large, that you do for us day in and day out. May you see much continued nachas from our children and me.
Especially you.
This past week's Parshas B'Havoscha, Chaim Shimon's Bar Mitzvah Parsha, opens with the lighting of the menorah, but also contains Vayehi ben Sarah Aaron. I'll attempt to link the two while also explaining the significance of the names we chose. The Psukim tell us that Aaron is given the task of lighting the menorah, and that he did it. Many lessons can be learned from these few Psukim. For one, despite what Aaron was going through, the loss of his two sons, and the many tasks of the Avodah, he himself took to lighting the menorah rather than delegating the task to someone else. This is because he understood the importance of lighting the menorah, because of what the menorah represents, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Because just as fire is light that can be spread by man, the same is the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is often compared to fire, or the essence of man. The middle ner of the menorah, for which all the other six point, as it is called in the Gemara in the Masechtas Menachos, the ner ma'aravi. And the Gemara in the Masechtas Shabbos states that this ner was a sign that the Shekhinah rested with Klal Yisrael, because a nes occurred with it daily. Not the nes of Hanukkah, but a regular nes every day. That the other six ners would only last the day they were lit, but the ner ma'aravi would continue to burn. And it was from this ner that the menorah was then relit each day. Rav Pam would refer to B'nai Torah as the ner ma'aravi of our generation. Embedded in the neshama of every yid is a brilliant light that is filled with potential for a life of greatness. As I mentioned, this past week's parsha also contains Vayehi ben Sarah Aaron. The Gemara in Masechtas Shabbos says that the little piece in the Torah, separated as it is with two upside down nuns, is viewed as a separate sefer in the Torah. We derive from this, as the Mishnah Berurah brings down, that in certain cases of a fire on Shabbos, one can save a sefer Torah if it has at least 85 letters that are still intact, even if those letters are scattered within many words. The source for the number 85 is that the smallest book of the Torah, Vayehi ben Sarah, contains those 85 letters. The numerical value of the word milah is 85. This is another excellent bond that highlights the association of bris milah to limud Torah. The kedusha of bris milah is a machsher, an instrument that enables a child to become a sefer Torah. The idea of matzitza bepeh, peh, hey, or also 85, is of limud Torah, being connected with the bris milah. Rabbi Yisachar Fran relates that the name that we are given at birth expresses our yet unrealized essence and potential. And the first and most important question that we're going to be asked in the Olam HaEmes is, what is our name? The meaning. Did we realize that potential that Hashem gave us and asked us to fulfill in this world? A Yiddish name helps the person identify as a Yid, and reminds him of his essence and special destiny, even as we may live among different cultures and gullahs. In Kabbalah, we know that there is a special merit to the neshama of the deceased when we name a child after him or her. By the way, this is going to be my corny joke. By the way, I always tell people who meet me and ask my name that I was named after U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And when they give me a confused look, I say, oh really, it's true. You see, FDR was named in 1882, and I was born in 1980, so I was named after him. It's hard to find a nice Bris joke, so better leave jokes out. Okay. Medrash teaches us that although Ruach HaKodesh no longer exists, there is one small area in which we're still granted a glimpse of Ruach HaKodesh. It comes to us when we struggle to find a name for our children, because the names of our children are the result of a partnership between our effort and Hashem's response in giving us a child. It is our custom to name children after those whom we deeply admire or seek to memorialize. To link a newborn with someone from the past is to bring together their neshamas in an inseparable bond of life. So this brings us to the names we chose for Chaim Shimon. Who was Chaim? Chaim, or his full name, Chaim Yehoshua Lerner, was my cousin. He was affectionately known as Herbie by those who knew him best. He passed away just over 2 weeks ago. It was a particularly difficult loss for me, and as I will explain, I will highlight a few things that made this man great, but my main focus is to explain why I felt such a kesher to him that naming my son after him was so important. Chaim Yehoshua was a true Ben Torah, in the truest form, a man of brilliance with multiple advanced degrees, including a PhD. He was accepted into the Ivy League school of Yale University only to turn them down so that he could continue to learn. This was a man who put Torah and Avodah first. He had Divrei Torah on the ready, when needed, and even stepped in when there was no Rav in a shul to ensure that there would be weekly Divrei Torah said. When anyone spoke of Herbie, one word was regularly used to describe him: a mensch. As the following story so clearly shows. He was a lawyer by trade, and as his son David mentioned at the Levaya, his practice for a time was in elder care, in addition to many other forms of practice. Presented to him on multiple occasions were elderly parents with children that would need caring for when they were gone. For these particular clients, he had a soft spot and would charge them minimally. David remembers asking his mother, Hadassah, why does Dad charge so little for all the work? Her answer, he would do it for free if he knew they wouldn't be embarrassed, but instead charged them a small fee so that they would have their dignity. I cannot, in this short amount of time, encapsulate who Herbie Lerner was, nor do I want to. This was all said at his Levaya and throughout Shiva. Today I celebrate the use of his name for my son because of who Herbie was to me. He came to each of my family simchas when able, despite living over 1,200 miles away, because he loved us, his family, and we loved him. Whenever at a simcha, I would see the learners walk through the doors into the room, my stomach would do dances at the joy of seeing them. They were my cousins from Miami Beach. They were my cousins that, even though the trip was long and wasn't easy, got on an airplane and made sure that they were there. Because to them, their family was everything. I can say personally that whenever I traveled to Florida, I called Herbie and Hadassah and asked when we might see them. When we traveled to Boca Raton a little over 2 years ago, it was in the thick of him retiring and leaving his law practice, and things were hectic, and they were unsure they would be able to see us. But they did see us when they insisted on driving to Boca on Motzei Shabbos and join us for Malava Malka and meet our newborn son at the time, Yosef. Throughout my life, I had a proud respect of the learners as a whole. While I wish that we were sharing in our simcha, that he were sharing in our simcha, because I know how much joy that would have brought him, I am honored to have his name given to my son, because as I mentioned, it will surely link the two of them and be a guiding force for our Chaim in his life ahead. Hadassah, David, and Nachum, it is my hope that with this naming today, it brings you some nechama to know that his name will continue and then we will raise Chaim Shimon in the way that emulates those of Herbies as a Ben Torah. Now, we also gave him a second name, Shimon. So who is Shimon? A little over 2 years ago, the Jewish world of Chazanas lost a long-standing member, Chazan Sherwood Goffin. To many, he was known as the Chaz. He was the Chazan of Lincoln Square Synagogue in Manhattan for over 50 years, taught hundreds and hundreds of bar mitzvah boys to lein and daven, and he was also a professor of Chazanas. To me, though, he was Zaidi Sherwood. This was a man whose humility was unmatched. During the Russian Jewry movement, he, together with Rav Shlomo Karbach and their musical talents, brought back thousands of Jews to Yiddishkeit. He voluntarily stepped away from all of it to focus his efforts on teaching, on ensuring the next generation understood what tefillah was, how important it was to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to do it correctly with the proper nusach. He did this most effectively through his position at Yeshiva University, where he was on the faculty at the Bell School of Music. My father actually attended some of those classes. His passing was mourned by thousands. He was an inspiration for so many, and the spiritual embodiment that so many look to at times of joy and sadness. His kesher to me, though, was unlike that of so many. When my oldest daughter, Chana Huva, was born in Manhattan, we attended the closest shul on the Thursday following her birth so that we might name her as soon as possible. It so happens that on that same day, Chazan Goffin had Yartzeit, and while they had wanted to give me an aliyah for the naming, they were unable and instead gave me Haba, and we then completed the Mishaberach and named her. Following davening, he came over to convey his sincere apologies to me for not being able to get the aliyah, and we spoke of the situation with my daughter, that my daughter was in, and he opened his heart and his home to me. For the next 5 weeks that she was at the local hospital, before being transferred to a larger institution, I slowly became somewhat of a Ben Bias in the Goffin home. Sherwood, along with his unbelievable wife, Batya, welcomed me into their home with open arms and worried about how my daughter was progressing in the hospital, with Batya even making regular visits to my daughter's bedside. My daughter was transferred on Yom Kippur, and as was the psak, only one parent could go with her at the time of the transfer. And since I was in shul, it was decided that I would remain. On what is physically the most difficult, physically the most difficult day for most, it was particularly difficult for a chazan, especially following Ne'ilah. As we came home following Marav and came into the apartment, Zaidi Sherwood sat down in front of a slice of cantaloupe that his wife had put in front of him, and as he took his first scoop out, he dropped the spoon and turned to me and said, "Forget this, we're driving you to the hospital to see your daughter. You must be worried sick." And with that, the three of us jumped in the car and headed uptown to the hospital she had been transferred to. The Goffins waited in the car for over an hour while I sorted out what was going on in the new hospital and organized myself. Only after I had the proper time to sort through what was going on did we get back in the car, and they drove me back to their home where we ate. Zaidi Sherwood to me was just that, a Zaidi. He happened to have been a world-famous chazan, but that's never who I saw, because that's not what he wanted. He didn't need or want the limelight. He was an Anov who had a strong connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through tefillah. He would often comment that not just anyone could or should go up to lead the tefillah. If you did not have the proper kavanas and understanding of the tefillos or the nusach, you shouldn't be going up. This is whose name we chose to give to Chaim Shimon, someone whose devotion to avodah, who never stopped seeing the kedusha of what he was doing and stayed away from the fame. With these two names, Chaim Shimon, from two unbelievable people, assures my wife and I that he is in good position to lead a life of what we just proclaimed a few short minutes ago. Just as you enter the Bris, so you should enter into Torah, Chuppah, and Masim Tovim, a life filled with Torah. Incidentally, the daily nace of the Ner Ma'aravi ended with the death of the great Kohen Gadol, Shimon HaTzadik. Our little Chaim Shimon will Mitzvah Hashem continue to be one of the Ner Ma'aravi that Rapam refers to as B'nai Torah, help to usher in the coming of Mashiach, we will again merit the nisim of the menorahs Ner Ma'aravi. Thank you. Mazel tov.